Are you having trouble communicating your desires? Today, I'm going to reveal a powerful tool that's going to help you tell your partner what you desire, exactly how you like it, exactly how you want it, so that they always know in the future. That's going to be easy to use, and it's going to be very explorative and fun for you to do. Specifically, I'm talking about a sex menu. I'm Brandon the Dom. Let's go ahead and dive in. So right now, you're probably like, what the hell is a sex menu? Am I going to a restaurant and getting a fancy menu in front of me? And, oh, yes, I would like the steak with asparagus. No, not exactly like that. However, just like a restaurant menu would list out all the items that maybe you could have at that restaurant, a sex menu is a large list of sexual acts or BDSM and kink acts that you could be doing. And you are rating how much you would like to do that and leaving a few notes about what that act looks like to you. A lot of times these are done in spreadsheets. I happen to like doing it in Google Sheets because then you can share it with your partner and they always have access. And then if you update it in the future, they're going to get the updated version. You might also have heard these called yes, no, maybe lists. So, having some sort of sexual act and you put, yes, I would like to do that. No, I wouldn't, or maybe I would. And these have also been called desire lists. So why would you even create one of these sex menus? Well, the very first thing, if it's not very obvious from the beginning of the video, is it fosters good communication. Most people have not really taken the time to figure out what turns them on, let alone express what turns them on. And oftentimes they're just leaving it up to chance. They want their partner to read their minds and be a sex god in the bedroom. And that's just not how it works. In my experience, great consistent sex happens when you actually communicate what your desires are, what turns you on, what your boundaries are. And this is the bedrock of any healthy relationship, whether it's a dom-sub dynamic, whether it's a poly relationship, a non-monogamous relationship, a marriage, whatever it is, communication is the bread and butter. However, there's a lot of people that struggle with talking about sex for various reasons, and it's quite understandable why. It's the most intimate thing that we could do, and there's often a lot of shame or guilt that we hold around our own desires. And depending on how well you've spoke to your partner in the past, if there's a container of openness and non-judgment, it can be easy for you to speak about your desires, or it may be quite difficult to look that other person in the eye and say, hey, I really want this thing. So sometimes it's easier to write down what your desires are. And a sex menu is a great way to allow you to write down for a ton of different sexual acts. I'm going to show you the version that I created here in just a moment, and it has 350 sexual acts. So I guarantee whatever it is that turns you on, it's probably on there. And if it's not, well, then you can list it, throw it on there, and your partner knows that one as well. But let me show you what a sex menu looks like and why it's such a powerful communication tool. So this is the sex menu template that I created. And you'll see at the top, it has an about section, how to use it. And then here's where the communication comes in really handy. It has a rating system. So each one of these ratings here describes how you may like that act or may not like it. And I find yes, no, maybe lists to be not detailed enough. I can see a sexual act and be like, okay, yes, I like that. But how often do I like it? Do I want it every day or every once in a while? Both of those are a yes, but it depends on how often it's showing up. Or maybe I only want it done in a certain way and then it's a yes. Otherwise, it might be a no. And same thing with a no. Maybe it's no most of the time, but maybe once a year, I want to do that thing. So, maybe there's a soft limit around that. And then maybe is just like everything else in between. Like maybe it'll happen. Well, what does that look like as a maybe? So I find it not granular enough. So on a sex menu, specifically the one that I created, there's a rating system and we have a hard limit. This is something you never, ever want to do. There's a soft limit, which means it's not ruled out completely, but you might have to work up to it. Trust needs to be built. Certain things need to be going on in the environment for that to happen. You might say, occasionally, every once in a while, I like to do this thing. It's kind of like a rich piece of chocolate cake. You don't have it every day, but every once in a while, it's nice to have. Then we have love it. So you say, yes, I want to do this thing quite often. It's very fun for me. Let's get to it. Need it is, I think, a great category because it's putting the things that you say, I absolutely have to have this as part of my love and sex life. And then try it. I think this is a lot better than maybe because it's showing your willingness to want to do this thing, even if you've never done it. And then indifferent, I think, is also an important category because maybe there's certain acts on there that you're indifferent to, but your partner really wants to do it. And so you're like, well, I'm not against it. I'm not drawn to it, but I'll do it because, you're really into it. And, that's fine with me. So it's nice to know which these acts are indifferent for you. So you can see as we scroll down here, there's different categories for things, and it lists each out one of the sexual acts. And I'll go through the categories in a moment. But at least it lists out each one of the acts, and then you can change which ranking you want for it. It could be a soft limit, hard limit, and it'll basically update for that. And then you can leave detailed notes about what that means to you. So for each one of these things, you can see as we scroll down a little bit, like aftercare. What does aftercare specifically look like for you? Because aftercare for everybody is totally different. So being able to leave notes there is, one, highly encouraged, but two, very useful for you to describe what it looks like to you. Maybe times that you would want to do this and times that you don't, how frequent it wants to happen, anything that's helpful for you to communicate to your partner. Now, what else does the sex menu do for you? Well, it's going to help you discover new things. Like I said, mine has 350 acts. There's probably some stuff on there that you've never heard of or, didn't know that you might be into. And when you have to start Googling and going down a rabbit hole, looking up certain things, you might find out, oh my goodness, I really want to try that out. Or you might find, you know what, that's probably not something I want. So you find new things that are fun and exciting and maybe new boundaries for yourself. I think this one's pretty obvious, but you also get to give and get consent. Using a sex menu helps to kind of give you an outline for what you're going to discuss with your partner, which acts that you're willing to do, which ones you're not, and discussing in detail what that act looks like for you in each one of those. So you can consent to several different acts in different ways instead of some sort of blanket consent. What's also really nice about doing sex menus is if you're polyamorous or you're engaging in some sort of non-monogamy, you can have a sex menu for each one of your partners, and you can better manage what their desires are and what their boundaries are so that when you go from one partner, you're not mixing it up with another partner and forgetting what boundaries and desires they have. And I think this is super important for the role as the Dom so that, I'm never crossing a boundary because I got the two people mixed up and like, oh yes, they like this and the other person doesn't. And by having it on Google Sheets, you can just always take a brief look before you go see that partner again and refresh your memory about the desires and boundaries that person has. And then the last benefit of doing a sex menu is it basically creates a giant list for you to try out. There's going to be things on your list and things on your partner's list that sound very exciting. And you have basically sex variety set up for a long time. You can start right at the top and run your way down the list if you want of the 350 acts. So let's go ahead and talk about how you can create a sex menu. Now, you can create one from scratch if you want, or you can find one to download on the internet, but I was already kind enough to create one for you and you can download it for free. You can just use the link down in the description. All I'm asking for is your email in return and to send you the sex menu. And then you have one pre-created on Google Sheets. Some other handy things about the sex menu that I created is these questions at the top. So they focus on, I think, some foundational questions that you should discuss with your partner. So if you guys are engaging in a DS dynamic, this helps out a lot. Of like, what does submissive mean and look like to you? And what does being dominant mean and look like to you? That way you kind of really get an understanding of what their type of submissiveness is or what type of dom that they're looking for. I'm sure you guys have had this discussion, but again, it helps to have it written down. And then moving on to feelings. So what are the feelings that you want to feel during sex? Anytime we're doing one of these sex acts, we're often looking for some type of feeling. Maybe it's surrender, maybe it's safety, maybe it's feeling ravished. Whatever it is, we're looking for those feelings, and it would help if you knew what feelings that person wanted to feel. So that way you can pick acts that create those feelings. On the flip side, you want to know what feelings your partner is trying to evoke in you. So sometimes they're doing acts of service and want to receive, love and appreciation for that, but maybe they also want to make you feel respected or appreciated or feel like you're in power or something like that. So understand what the motivation is on both sides of the slash and for each of you. And then the last one that I like to leave is, especially because we're filling these out separate and you're often filling it out on your own, it's a little easier to talk about insecurities And a lot of times in sex, there are certain insecurities that come up. I like to ask this question is, I promise to never judge you, but is there anything that you're shy, insecure, or nervous about that I should know? So this just gives them an opportunity to start sharing some of those things. And then this sex menu has quite a few categories. So each one of the acts are put into categories. So we have relationships, we have just general things around sex and kink. Then we have manual stimulation, oral, intercourse, anal, orgasm, toys that could be used, the dominance and submission, primal play, tantra, exhibitionism and voyeurism, role play, dressing up, pet play, group play, bondage, impact play, sadism and masochism, marks, torture, edge play, and then a couple others. And then a few additional notes at the bottom about basically when the last time you were tested, are there any medical things that I should know about? How do you practice safe sex? Just so you get a general idea about that person. Now, some tips for when you're actually filling out this sex menu. I recommend doing it separate. So you do one and your partner does one. And I like doing this separate as a dom because your submissive wants to please you. And so if you say, I'm into this thing, there's a high likelihood that they would say they're also into that thing in order to please you. So to keep that from happening, I tell my submissive to fill out the sex menu without them ever having seen mine. So I'm not influencing them. They already know a little bit about the likes I've had based on the conversations that we've had. However, they don't know the full spectrum of everything yet. So I have them go fill it out first. That way it's less biased and they put down the things that they really, really want and the boundaries that they have. And then as a reward, I'll send them mine. So this leads into my first tip around this, which is to be honest. You're never going to have your desires fulfilled if you're not honest with your partner about what it is that you like. On the flip side, if you're not honest about what your boundaries are and what you don't like, well, then you may end up doing something that you regret and then you get resentful of that person. This also means don't try and please your partner. If there is something that your partner likes and you know they like it, but you don't like it, do not put on the sex menu that you like it. Again, that's going to lead to resentment when you have to do that act that you don't like. And it's going to be regretful if you actually go through doing an act that you don't like, which none of that leads to very good sex. And then my last tip is just to have fun while you're filling it out. Yes, it's a big list. I don't recommend you tackle it all at once unless, you got a free few hours to go through it. But you can take little bit by little bit, explore some new things, have fun, basically expressing yourself and describing how you like these things. And then when it's all finished, having fun, having a discussion with your partner and finding out some great things about them as well. And that leads into step 2 of how to create your sex menu, which is to have a discussion with your partner about what you put on there. If this is difficult for you to have a conversation, I recommend watching my video on the 5 tools to communicate your turn-ons. But the main idea here is to create a container of openness and non-judgment. And a container is basically just the time and space for you both to talk with one another. And when I say openness and non-judgment, I mean you're open to hearing your other partner and the different desires and boundaries that they have. And when they actually speak those desires or boundaries, you don't judge them for having that desire or having that boundary. If it's something that you're not into, that's totally okay. You let them know that, and maybe you offer to try a different act, figure out what feeling it is they're trying to find behind that act and see if there's another act that they like that you also like that would fulfill that feeling or need. Or maybe you can help to facilitate a way they can get it met elsewhere. Or you can simply say you're not into that. That's totally fine too. But you're never ever judging that person saying, oh my God, why are you into that? That's so gross, or you're a terrible person or something like that. I promise that will be the quickest way that they shut down and never share their needs or desires with you again. And then the third step is to revisit your menu every so often. So over time, you're going to change, especially if you engage in some of the ones that maybe you wanted to try or you've only done once. You may find out you really, really like that thing and all of a sudden it becomes a love it or I need it all the time. Or you may find out, nope, I never want to do that thing ever again, and it becomes a boundary for you, as well as your desires change over time. So I recommend maybe every 6 months, maybe more if you're like in this deep exploration phase and you're trying out a bunch of different things, of just updating your menu so that you know for yourself what your desires and boundaries are, but then you can also express it with your partners. As I mentioned before, you can download the template that I created and just showed you with all the 350 sex acts and the ranking system. I'll leave a link for that in the description. Just give me your email address and I'll send you over the sex menu. And if you guys have other questions around sex, around kink, around BDSM, about creating DS dynamics, please drop a comment below. I would love to know the type of things that you were looking for, and I might create a video or write an article for it in the future. And if you enjoyed the video today, please subscribe to the channel because I'll have much more information like this coming out in the future. Until then, thank you so much for your time and attention.